Something changed in 2015, and I'm going to declare
Ooh.
that 2015 is the year that the girl boss era begins officially, and that
Okay.
it was not present in 2014, but it did become present by 2015 in an identifiable way. Hi, everybody. My name is Douglas A. Burton, and I'm an author. And tonight I'm here to talk about girl bosses in film. The film Ballerina came out. It's a John Wick story with a female lead. And by all accounts, this is a good movie. However, this film did not get the box office response that we were looking for, or that people that are pulling for this film were hoping for. And it's kind of a curiosity why this film's not doing so well. So to talk about the girl boss phenomenon, which I think this is attached to, joining me tonight is Retro Nerd Girl. How are you
Hello.
tonight?
Very good. Very good. How are you?
Awesome. I'm hanging in there. Why don't you tell people quickly who you are and where they could find you?
Okay, well, I am Retro Nerd Girl and I love movies. So you can find me on YouTube and X talking about movies. My mission is to serve, preserve, protect, and explore the cultural significance of cinema as a reflection of history.
I love it.
Oh, great.
And that's a wonderful mission statement there. And if you haven't already, if you're watching this, check out her video. She has a cavalcade of videos that cover some of the older films, retrospectives and analyses, and then movie talk as well. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the girl boss phenomenon. I think this has been a thing. It has been happening for a while. I do think that it has entered several phases, and I think that we're beginning to see a new phase take shape right now. So just this past weekend, we had a new movie that came out, Ballerina. So Ballerina, it has just come out, and this is from the world of John Wick. Ballerina, it is a female-centric story. It's got a heroine in there, and she is part of this order of assassins. And from all accounts, this was very good. It had positive critical reviews. The fans who have seen it said they like it. John Wick himself is in the film briefly, or at least for a stretch. Retro, how familiar are you with the John Wick franchise?
I'm very familiar. I think I've seen up to like 4. I do believe that this movie has a lot of things that is not going for it. Yeah, it's pretty much a casualty of timing, I believe. But it is also a question we've been all asking, and it's all over the internet. Is Ballerina suffering because of the girl boss fatigue that we've been having? And we can go further and talk about the term girl boss itself, but it is basically women-led movies that seem to lack the substance and the attention to great characterization that's missing from those particular projects that we've been getting for the last 5 years, or maybe even 10 years.
I would say 10.
10 years, yeah. It's been such a long time. I think we could have been okay with the first 5 years of it, but the last 10 years have been so obvious and
Right.
so egregious that people are now like, oh, phooey. We don't want to see another strong female doing something on.
Yeah, there is a market stigma now to some of these heroine-led films that are coming out, and this stigma is affecting otherwise good shows. And the same reason that I am against bad storytelling or bad girl bosses, which we'll cover here in just a second, is the same reason why I am rooting for something like Ballerina. At the end of the day, what I care about is good storytelling and good film work.
Yes.
So if you are invading a film with your messaging or an ideological position that is weakening the story, then I oppose that story. Likewise, if you're doing the homework and you're doing a good job and coming up with a good movie and no one's showing up because of the stigma, well, now I'm against the stigma. So I want to find that happy medium. I want to walk this line, because what matters to me the most is what is good and what is bad in this girl boss discussion, because there's a lot of bad, but there's also some really good stuff here too. And I think as an audience member, as creators, as writers, our job is to know the difference. So if there's a good story out there, I think we want to find it. So I also want to say this. I believe strongly that the audience wants great heroines. They want
Yes.
great heroes. They want great heroines. They want great stories. I am not one of the people that believe that the audience is misogynistic, in general, and fundamentally, pathologically opposed to female leads. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
I believe that the audience wants good heroines, but you have to deliver one. And some of these movies are, and I want us to find them again. I want us to get excited about them.
Yes. And one of the questions that's really been on everyone's lips right now is that we've been getting a lot of activists saying, okay, there haven't been enough with strong women and action movies, and they haven't been in this particular field and genre and this. But here we have a perfectly fine movie, including Furiosa. If we remember Furiosa, that was a fantastic movie. We're not getting any Oscars for that, but still very good. It really lacked a female audience, and so where are the women to back up their sisters in this? And that is a big question people are asking. Women don't want to watch this. They don't want to watch this. They are not interested in this kind of in general. Like somebody like me, of course I'm interested. There are going to be a pocket of women who are going to love sci-fi action, that kind of stuff, but on the most grand scale, coming to the movies in droves. They did not for Furiosa, and they are not for Ballerina. And
So
that's the part where we're really wondering, like, okay, well, who should Hollywood in the future still make women key leads in these kind of action movies? Are they going to lose money if they do this?
I think they
And
need to learn how to market and communicate with their audiences again. I think they broke the trust of the audience because what they were
mm,
doing is giving us poorly written, poorly developed female lead characters in very specific franchises, and then
yes,
attacking the fandom and the audience by
yes,
calling them a lot of names. And I think that really turned off a lot of people. And now they're not really saying they're sorry. They're just putting out another film that has another strong female character in it, and audiences are like, "Oh, I'm not touching that because if I don't like it, I guess I'm a terrible person." And so they don't go.
yeah.
Now, I didn't go see Furiosa, and it wasn't out of protest. It was really a sense that I had already seen it, and it was this.
Hmm.
It was called Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
It was like a bait and switch where they put this. It really wasn't about Mad Max at all, and it was about
Hmm.
Furiosa, and it ended up being very good. And so they kind of got away with it. And then it was like, well, here's the story about her backstory.
Yeah.
And I was like, and they showed images that looked very similar. It's like another desert chase. So it just seemed like there was nothing new here. And they changed the actresses, which is always
Which
to destabilize things.
yes.
And I skipped it. When I saw it on streaming, I was like, whoa, this is actually freaking great. you know,
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
liked it.
I think the other thing, and people were asking for a Furiosa movie, but they were specifically wanting Charlize Theron to play the part,
Well,
and
she was
and
really
and
good and
yeah, yeah,
unexpectedly
they
so.
really attached themselves to her.
So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to walk us through a little bit. We're going to try to move through it rather efficiently here, so that we could cover a lot of ground and get the full picture of this girl boss phenomenon. When I could pinpoint the exact day, it's the year it started,
Mm,
meaning it was not happening this year, it was happening the next year. And I will show you both failed examples, and I will also show you successful examples. Just because you change out the lead character to a heroine does not mean it's going to be a bad story. Just because you take a side character who is let's say a female secondary character in an older film and move her to the forefront, that doesn't mean it's going to be a bad film. So
yes.
there are examples where all these weird strategies that most of us are really don't like, there are examples where this has worked. So we will explore where it works and where it doesn't and why. So briefly, I would like to take us back to an earlier time. First off, Retro, and I think you're the perfect person to discuss this. The audience has embraced great heroic women in fiction, correct? In the
Yes.
past, like
Yes, I
prior
believe
to
so.
2000, I mean, it wasn't like we did not have great heroic women. And the male audiences, female audiences have embraced many of them. Do you want to talk about maybe some of the legends of this pantheon
Oh,
of heroic
yeah,
women?
I have a list, Tomb Raider. Since they've modernized her, she's not as potent, but Tomb Raider with Angelina Jolie had the femininity, had the grace. She's also done Salt, Wanted, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and they were fantastic movies. These are all wonderful characters that she developed, and she did not portray them as a man or trying to emulate a man. She did this as a woman and as as an action star, really, in
Right.
these movies. Yeah. Then we have Foxy Brown, 1974, played by Pam Grier. She was a fantastic action hero. We have Jane Fonda in 1965 and Cat Ballou, a gun-toting female out for revenge. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got in The Birds a female protagonist. We've got a movie that I like, a little small movie called Queen of Blood, where the main protagonist is a female. It's all over history. We don't have to look very far to see these action movies with females that are actually not just the sidekick, not just the girls that are screaming and need to be saved, that they're actually like the heroes of those movies, and they all have great characters, but also in dramas as well. There of course, tons and tons of examples of females that are portrayed as strong female protagonists with strong wills and desires, and that's been the mainstay of American cinema since it began. So
100%. And you have classics like The Wizard of Oz with Dorothy Gale, Their Eyes Were Watching God with Janie Crawford, and Scarlett O'Hara and Gone with the Wind, and the Nancy Drew stories. There is a rich and wonderful history of great women in fiction. And I think that, yes, there's definitely a case that it may not be exactly proportional, like 1-to-1, but they certainly weren't completely like blocked out.
yeah,
There's
or
these great,
missing.
right? They were there, and of course, there's a lot of male-centric stories as well, and we can list off those readily as well. But my point is that the girl boss thing is relatively new. When Ellen Ripley came out in 1979, nobody was mad about that, or if there was,
Mhm,
it,
mhm,
it, it
mhm.
certainly didn't win the conversation. The culture had embraced her. They embraced Sarah Connor in the first Terminator. They really embraced Sarah Connor in Terminator 2, and Ellen Ripley made a comeback in Aliens, and just became my favorite heroine of all time in that film.
And I'll say this, one of the reasons why those were really successful was because we didn't get the center of like, oh, these are female characters. There wasn't that discussion. No one ever discussed these women as being women in a story. They discussed the story and how great the story was. That was the powerful factor. Was
Well, and you
that
could
these
say, as a man sitting there, I was like, man, she's going back for Newt. I don't know if I would do that. Holy cow, this chick's crazy. She's like, you watched her do it. You were convinced. You didn't need to. It didn't matter if she was a man or a woman. This character went and did this incredibly heroic thing. And then when the Queen Alien followed her back, she had to fight her in the. So we all saw it.
yes,
You don't need to be coaxed. I don't need an article to tell me that she was heroic or she's the first woman that did it. Like, that's patronizing.
it's
Oh, you're the first
so
woman to fight an alien. That's a good thing for you. She didn't want that. We didn't ask for it, and we didn't get it. And as a result, Ripley was allowed, Sarah Connor was allowed, Dorothy Gale was allowed to live and breathe in their own space and to
mm,
become excellent in their
yes.
own right. Right?
Yes. Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so in 2014,
Mhm.
continuing this tradition you just outlined, going all the way back, we had a bunch of heroine-centric stories that were mostly, if not entirely, successful around this time. The Twilight series, Now,
Yes.
I'll be honest. At the time, I was dating her at the time. She became my wife. She had her two cousins there, and I watched the first Twilight, and it's certainly not a movie I would have gone and sought out. But you're doing the adult thing, and you're watching it, and it's not that bad. The first Twilight is actually very good, and I thought it was done very well. And I
I
ended up
liked it. Yeah.
yes, and I ended up studying it for the Heroines Labyrinth, and it
Mm.
meets every single archetype is in there. So you had the Twilight series, you had the Hunger Games series. This is where Jennifer Lawrence thinks she was the first female action star, which we all know she's not. But it was very commercially successful, and so she earned her place in that position, and they didn't make a big deal about it. By that, there was no girl boss talk at this time.
Yeah, there really wasn't, from my recollection. It was people were really like vibing on this new idea, YA novels that are suddenly now becoming a big deal, and it was just following the story. People were loving that story.
Yeah, and it was. I remember it was still kind of a cinema event, so it was a thing. Also at this time, we had the Game of Thrones phenomenon. And if you remember, the Game of Thrones became one of the greatest television events of all time. I'm not going to talk about season 8, but leading up to that, Game of Thrones became very heroine-centric. You had Arya Stark, Sansa Stark, you had Cersei Lannister, you had Daenerys Targaryen, Yara Greyjoy. You had women everywhere in the Game of Thrones franchise, to where they were all moving to the forefront. There was a strong presence of women all throughout, with major storylines by this time. Finding Dory came out by then, I think in 2010. Maleficent came out in 2014, as did Ex Machina. So none of these films had any sort of stigma to them. There was no problem with them. The number of movies that had heroine-centered stories was growing, and it was well received in 2014. So something changed in 2015, and I'm going to declare that 2015 is the year that the girl boss era begins officially, and that it was not present in 2014, but it did become present by 2015 in an identifiable way. And I have come up with a definition or some criteria that we can, and you can add to this, Retro, what I think a girl boss is. So in pop culture, the term girl boss, I would say, is a mostly pejorative term, a negative term, a stigma tagging term, in which a fictional female character who fails to achieve popular consensus. Okay, so that she's not well received.
Yes.
So one of the criteria that I've identified is that a girl boss is created in the spirit of rectifying real or perceived social inequities. And there is actual lines of dialogue assigned to this end.
Yeah,
the media
dialogue
covers these films to that end. That is the framework, that this character is rectifying a social inequity of some kind. So it is covered this way. When they interview the actress or director, they discuss the story in this context. And it's very self-aware of this in this character. I think that is a fundamental criteria. One, a girl boss is perceived as wielding unearned ability, status, rank, or knowledge. That is a typical criticism levied at the girl boss, that she's doing things that she hasn't really earned. She hasn't developed the skill, but she's using it like a master. She's doing all these great things, and we don't know if they set any of that up. 3, a girl boss rarely experiences significant failure, setbacks, or disgrace. This falls into that Mary Sue category, where there's really not a lot going wrong, or it's very minor setbacks, and she overcomes most of these relatively easily. From a writing standpoint, that's a very bad thing. You want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Number 4, the girl boss struggles with relatability to general audiences. I think that's a fundamental aspect to the girl boss, that she's not relatable. She's not connecting with too many people. Someone out there might be relating to it, but in general audiences are not. And then lastly, girl bosses have an irreverent attitude toward the existing lore in the franchise. Most
Mm.
of these characters are coming into pre-existing franchises and have an irreverent attitude toward it, or openly break the lore, or ridicule some part of the franchise.
Publicly, yeah.
So those are 5 criteria
Mm.
that I have created in the spirit of rectifying social inequities. They're self-aware about it. They cover it that way. They present it that way. There's dialogue given to that, and the media defends it on that line. 2, perceived as the Girlboss is perceived as wielding unearned ability, status, rank, or knowledge. Rarely experiences significant setback, loss, or disgrace. Struggles with relatability to general audiences, and irreverent attitude toward existing lore within the franchise. Those are 5 criteria that I've zeroed in on that separate, or that you could point to and say, those are the reasons people aren't liking this character.
Yes, and I really wish there was a different term and not girl boss, because girl boss really was invented to be sort of a great way to help young ladies feel powerful. And even today, I bumped into a channel that was the channel is called like Girl Boss Mechanic, a lady who is a mechanic, and she's really good at it. And it's like that was the true purpose of this term, was to like help people feel confident. I'm a girl boss, I'm doing something that maybe unclassic to what people would expect me to do. Or like you could say Elle Woods from Legally Blonde would be considered a girl boss, because she like defeats all of
Yeah.
these challenges and actually embodies a specific kind of personal power by the end, or when she reaches her arc. And so that was the good way, word, or the usage of the word. And now it's kind of, we've got this ugly term that's like floating around
Well,
that is really about, the obvious, pointing the obvious of what people are seeing on screen. Where, I think maybe the first couple of years when this was happening, you could pinch yourself and say, maybe that's not just that's happening, and it'll go away. And it never did go away.
well, the word girl boss, you're right. The word girl boss was meant to be, not meant to be. It's not like they designed this word.
No,
The
it just
word
sort of
was in
popped up.
usage as a positive descriptor of of a woman who have mastered her an art or a craft
Yeah,
or something that she's
yeah.
doing very proficiently, and at a very high level, and she's earned it. A lot of these actresses, I think, took the term and just pinned it on themselves. Said, "I'm a girl boss in this film," and they did not get there. They did not quite earn it or
Mm.
command that level of expertise on the screen. And some of it's not their fault. Some of it is the script, the writing, absolutely. But I don't think they helped themselves in some of these interviews where they talked about it like that. So
Well, yeah, we also know that behind the scenes there were mandates on what people were supposed to do with characters, especially female ones, that they couldn't have certain things written in the script. It had to be reworked in order to present this sort of super being that nobody could touch. And that's where they lost the characterization. We're supposed to want to be them.
right,
And there is a certain kind of fantasy that goes along with, watching a movie, where you have someone who is superhero, a superhuman, or does incredible things that you wish you could do. There's a lot of fantasy that goes on there, but it became sort of like girls versus boys, and there's no other movie I could say you could see it the most in, except for Ghostbusters 2016. That's the one movie where you're like, "Why is this a competition between girls and boys?"
right.
And when the guys did it back in 1984, it was totally fine. So why is there a need to make it a girl thing specifically? So that was when the conversation really started to come on the scene, and eyeballs were like, well, what?
Right. Right. Well, that's that the first criteria, the created in the spirit of rectifying some sort of social inequity or imbalance between men and women, or a patriarchal worldview, that these women themselves in this show right now are going to shatter this, and they're going to talk about how they're shattering it, and then the media is going to cover it for that reason, and then the actresses are going to discuss it for that reason. So I think that is one of those identifiable, measurable things that you can point to and say, that's what they're doing that's hurting this film or this character right now in real time.
Yes.
They're doing this thing. So whereas, Ripley didn't have that. She wasn't rectifying that. A lot of the male character, if you think of Alien, the male characters were dismissive toward her. Remember they had, Parker had like the steam going. He's like, what? He was pretending not to hear her. And then, Ash, she's like, don't let him in. I can't let him in. And then Ash just lets him in anyway. And he's like, I was going to take that chance. And she's like, that's a pretty big chance. They were dismissive of her. She didn't give a speech about how this is so typical of an all male environment, for example. She brooded, she dealt with it, and in the end, she was the baddest ass on that ship, and she earned it. She did it. She dealt with it. There's that great scene where she's like, where Parker's complaining. She's like, "Will you listen, Parker?" And she establishes some dominance in a very realistic way. She does the same thing with Hudson in Aliens. So she does it in real time. There's no dialogue assigned to this specifically, like meta. So you're right. Yeah, these characters, that is a big problem with those. But I'll say, you mentioned Ghostbusters. 2015, 2 films occurred that I think launched the Girlboss era, in that there was all these heroine-centric films coming out, and they were well received. They were commercially successful. They were critically acclaimed, and the audience liked them. And then you had 2015. So in 2015, 2 films came out that redefined female leads in film. And both of them can claim some major successes, by the way. The first one was Mad Max Fury Road, which we talked about.
Yes.
Mad Max Fury Road comes out, and it's supposed to be a Mad Max movie, but anyone who watches it knows it's about Furiosa. Mad Max is really a secondary character in the film. So here's an example of a film where the lead male character, not just the lead male character, the lead male character for which the franchise is named, it's called Mad Max.
Yes.
It's not called Star Wars. It's called Mad Max. So his name is the franchise. You see him being kind of slid down the trough in favor of Furiosa. This is considered an egregious error. So sometimes people will say a girl boss is a female character who comes in and pushes a male character to the side. Maybe, but here's a film that this pattern takes place, and yet the film is successful. It was commercially successful. Audiences like it, fans liked it, and by the way, Mad Max Fury Road was nominated for several Academy Awards and won several.
Yes.
I've rewatched the movie multiple times, and I actually like it more and more each time I watch it. The visuals, the chase, the aesthetics of it, the world building of it. I just love it. And plus, I studied this movie for the Heroines Labyrinth as well. This was a really good one. It's considered like a crime today to bump a male lead of the franchise to the side, and for good reason. It's I wouldn't want to do that in a female-centric story. However, that alone does not ruin the film, is my point, that you can do it and get away with it. And Mad Max Fury Road did it, and they did it, and they succeeded. That is one of the major turning points in what's going to launch the girl boss era, because it worked in Mad Max. A very male, I mean, this was a testosterone, gasoline, muscle car, desert, this was an ultimate male space in terms of story. And now it's got Furiosa running the show. 2, in 2015, Star Wars The Force Awakens comes out, and this was a heroine-centric story for the first time in a Star Wars film, and it was led by Rey. And I think we've talked about this. Rey did look iconic in the uniform in the Force Awakens era. Yes. And the Force Awakens got a lot right, even though it didn't. We know what happens, but in the early going, this was considered not just well received. To this day, it's the highest grossing film in the domestic box office history at over $900 million,
That's impressive.
which is incredible. So it's the number one film all time. So this said, not only is Fury Road bumping aside a male character in a male franchise and earning Oscars, you just put a female lead into Star Wars, and it's the highest grossing film of all time at the domestic box office. It's not just commercially successful, it's the most commercially successful you could have dreamed of.
Yeah.
Both hero-centric, both 2015. This now mass the army to kick open the door and start doing something new in film with female leads. So I'm going to hand it off to you. So in 2016,
Oh boy.
you get a couple new ones, right? I'll mention two that I think are successful, and then we'll get to the one you mentioned. Hidden Figures comes out. This was a really good movie, and it was historically accurate.
Yes.
This was a very good movie. So, it was hero-centric. It was historically accurate, women of color, and it was totally successful. This was a great movie. Rogue One comes out, the follow-up on Star Wars, and it's another hero-centric story. And at the time, in 2016, one of the highest grossing spin-off films of all time. So, and it was hero-centric. So now we're talking about, this is working. And then you get Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So how would you analyze Ghostbusters in terms of the Girlboss discussion?
Well, it was really the public discussion that was being had by the actors and producer, the director, not the producer, but the director, about how this was going to be different from the guys, and the focus on it all being an all female led story, and how anybody who didn't like the idea or premise for the movie were basement dwelling horrible people. And so there was a specific attack on the fans against anyone who had any qualms about the movie, which is very odd. It was one of the first times I had ever seen actresses, and these were all likable actresses too.
Yes.
Actually go after the fans. And I know it's really tough when you're and all actors go through this, even like anyone who goes up for like the new Batman or the new Superman, always get those people like, oh, you're not going to be as good as the last guy, and they always get like people, you're the wrong person for the role, until the movies come out, and then people say, oh, you did a fantastic job.
Robert Pattinson. Yep.
Yeah, this happens to men as well. And so it was more like, oh, all of these, a very big attack on the male audience that possibly didn't enjoy everything that they were seeing in the previews and teasers. So I thought that was unfair, because there are some people out there who don't fit their category that they've put everybody into. And when you're talking to fans, you're talking to all the fans. You're not just talking to the bad actors. You're talking also to the people who are just interested in the film. Unfortunately, it feels like everybody gets dumped into the same pool, and that conversation between the actors and the fans really seemed to be a big problem. There was also a lot of contention against or negativity against the lore of Ghostbusters, that they really wanted to undo it all and create a brand new universe altogether.
Well, they went from a comedy with heart to like slapstick to parody. I mean, it wasn't really even the same type of comedy, It
was
even
mostly all
smart.
improv. Yeah, they were doing improv a lot, which I didn't mind it. It's just some of it did go on a little too long. It's not the worst movie in the world, but to have one of the finishing scenes be all the girls gather around with their proton packs and zap the creature's private areas, I think is
Yeah.
very telling of what of what you feel of the opposite sex. It's really, upsetting to know, like, if you have a son or you have someone who, that you're with, and you're like, you can't just be like, "Yay, that scene," with them sitting right next to you, and there's this, like, emotional attack happening on screen against the opposite sex. It just feels wrong.
Well, and a targeted attack specifically, what defines, the
Yeah.
opposite sex, and that's sort of like real hatred or sadism, like a sadistic. You don't quite see that in a funny way in the reverse,
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it was unusual, and Ghostbusters 2016 also got politicized very heavily. There was an election that year, and I
Yes.
remember the news articles. It was like you said, it was one of the first times that this new attack started coming out, that if you didn't like Ghostbusters 2016, then it was emblematic of a misogynistic renaissance in America, led by the new president and men in general, and that this was now specific. This was something that exemplified this misogynistic hatred of women that would not have existed if Trump wasn't president in 2016. But now that he
Mhm.
is, now men are acting like this, and proof no one liked Ghostbusters 2016. That was kind of the
Yes,
way they were framing the
yes,
the backlash to the story, is as emblematic of something larger in the culture. And what always bothered me, and probably a lot of people, was this total sense of like, that's that. I don't think that's why people hated this movie. Like a sense that what all these authority figures, credible news outlets, the thought leaders were saying something confidently that was arguable. And they
yes.
weren't saying it like, hey, this is one way to look at the problem. They were saying it like, here's the problem, and we're gonna turn this message up to like maximum volume. So it was hard to hear people saying this one message so loudly, so assertively, when it was so arguable, it was so debatable, and that debate wasn't being had in the media.
And also
So
people they didn't show up, at the box office like people like they thought they would.
yeah, so
You
you had those two big successes. So the prevailing wisdom, and I'm sure you remember the headlines too, is like, chicks are in. That the new thing was, we need more hero-centric stories, more female leads. It's a new era. We're gonna bust loose. Here's Ghostbusters 2016, and the audience was like, not interested. So it certainly threw off this narrative
Yes.
that that making that replacing male characters. Maybe it's not 100%, but that's not the lesson that was learned at all.
They did
Um,
not learn. And the key element with Ghostbusters, the reason why it did not make the money was that they should have made, or had the people's love and affection, was because of the writing. There wasn't a whole lot of writing. The most of it was done in improv, and there were little nuggets of brilliance in there that you could have been like, oh, okay, we could expand on this. The way you get back at an audience that maybe you think hates you is make an amazing film.
yeah.
And so that was what was not there. I think all the ladies that were performing did a great job, and but without a script to guide you on this, on this journey, you are pretty much lost trying to edit all this stuff together, and that's where the movie really, really had a big problem with, was the writing itself. There wasn't hardly any of it.
Well, and
And
I'm just saying the antagonistic um, attitude toward the fans, your audience, your customers, was
but
was perplexing.
I think people would have been willing to eat their words and forgive, the sins of being called names, right? Hey, they really did a horrible campaign, but this is a great movie,
Right.
and if they felt like, hey, there was justice being done in the actual creation of the movie, that the movie really served them, the way they really wanted to be served, being long-lasting fans since 1984. People were waiting for something amazing, and they shouldn't have they should have gotten a great movie, and they got a meh movie.
Right. So there, you're Hollywood. You're sitting there. You've got Mad Max, Academy Award winning prestige in a male franchise with a female lead. You've got Force Awakens, and now you got Ghostbusters sitting on the bench with you, and you're like, okay, okay. But Hollywood took this as a challenge, not as a learning moment.
Yes.
And we go in. Oh, I will like to say 2016 also gives us Moana, which I love Moana.
Yes.
So that is a very good film that came out by Disney, which Moana, by the way, I check the Nielsen ratings regularly. Moana, week in, week out for years, shows up on the Nielsen ratings for
Oh,
films.
really?
So
Wow.
this is one of those movies that so remember this, because the Gen Alpha Moana is going to be like their Star Wars, because all of them will have seen it and grown up watching it. They're going to love Moana. So they need to capitalize on that the right way. They've got something there. But we're going into 2017, and we start to get things heating up on the antagonistic side. On the positive side, 2017 gives us Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot.
Yes, people love that.
This was well received. I loved it. She looked good. She became Wonder Woman, like boom, in my head. And by the way, we were talking about all the great female characters before the modern era. We can't forget Linda Carter in the 70s,
yes.
playing Wonder Woman.
Oh, yes. And don't forget about the Bionic Woman as well. Lindsay Wagner. She was amazing.
Yeah, these people were like, so like Linda Carter especially was just lodged. She's Wonder Woman, right? But Gal Gadot rather immediately established herself as the new face of Wonder Woman. You know, this is the new Wonder Woman. And even now they're talking about they're going to cast another Wonder Woman. I'm like, Gal Gadot's going to be tough to replace. She kind of had the look. She did something so right with that role. That comes out in 2017, and there wasn't a lot of messaging in one. There was a couple comments in the movie. I remember her saying, like, we don't need men. Like,
yeah, well, that's the nature of the Amazon anyway, which you can accept for their culture, right? Because they've had past involvement with men that were negative. That's pretty normal. But
right. So there you can justify the line in an in-world way, is what you're saying. So
yes.
that helps. And also, I never got a sense watching the film that Gal Gadot or Wonder Woman did not like Steve Trevor. The love, she seemed to really like him. There seemed to be some genuine chemistry between him, and the character herself liked men. Like she was fine. She didn't have a chip on her shoulder about it. And so a relationship was possible with these two characters. So anyway, 2017 does give us Wonder Woman. However, 2017 gives us Star Trek Discovery, which is not a well-received. So they replaced the captain with a very antagonistic, very emotional lead. And it's not just her. I definitely don't want to blame the actress. The writing on the show is very much in line with social messaging. So it went first and foremost in that. And then right in 2017, you had Jodie Whittaker take over Doctor Who.
Okay.
So it's Star Wars, Mad Max, Star Trek, Doctor Who. Like, you could see why some guys are like, what's going on?
They hate what's happening.
Yeah, you can't blame them for being a little curious about what the heck, why this is suddenly happening. But also, these weren't done very well. These were not well-written versions of these characters. And then, of course, in 2017, you had The Last Jedi, which took the great female lead from Force Awakens and brought her into this show. And they did something that most of the fans will never forgive. They emasculated Luke Skywalker while trying to promote their new heroine. And this seemed pretty unforgivable. There are scenes in there with Luke that you'll never forget. Terrible scenes. And she beats him. She knocks him down. Could you imagine if Luke did that to Yoda? Beats up Yoda in Empire Strikes Back? You'd be like, dude, this guy Luke doesn't deserve to ever be a Jedi. So now you got The Last Jedi.
Overpower her like this, you know?
Yeah, Yeah, they're trying to elevate her by bringing him down, something that will become a pattern. And so 2017 is the year that all the media became united in like blasting fans. I couldn't look at social media without some post. Someone
Yes.
said this, fans are this, fans are the worst part of Star Wars. Fans, you go on to Twitter at the time and fans this and fans that, and fans are the ones that are destroying the franchise. Who
Yes,
knew
but
about?
you
And that's when I
need
think we heard
them.
the
You
term
you
toxic
need the fans.
masculinity for
Yeah.
the first time, and we're being painted. All of us are being painted with this brush. So you really got a pretty heavy-handed approach in
Hmm.
terms of the message to the fans.
Yes.
We don't like you. You're
Yeah.
the problem. You can leave.
Yeah.
Was the message, and the fans are like,
Yes.
fine,
Okay, bye.
I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. You
Yeah,
know.
and only people in social media really covered any of those pieces of content because people wanted to know, like, okay, behind the curtain, what is it like over there? And the few people who did watch, they were like, it's bad, guys. It's pretty
Well, right,
bad.
and the fans took it personal, and they should.
Well, I mean, you're asking a person to spend more money than they probably have already spent thousands of dollars on merch or content or DVDs or all sorts of memorabilia. And then you're asking them to watch your new project, but then you're insulting them at the same time. Like, yeah, like explain that to me. You can't do that. They've already spent a lot already. They already know the lore, and so the other issue is the lack of attention to that lore and doing your own thing out of lore and then saying to fans, "Oh, just eat it. Just suck it up because I changed the rules because I want to." And so people are like, "Why do I bother studying, Star Wars or any other of these franchises? Because why should I be a super fan? Because you guys don't gratify me by even like sticking to the lore." And this is where the MCU for a long time did so well with the
Yes.
audience because they knew those inside stories that were from old comic books and bring it back into live action. People want to feel the satisfaction of knowing the lore more than this is a super fan. They didn't understand the fans and they still don't understand the fans. They never did.
Right. Well, and 2017 is where a lot of people start, there's a pattern now. It's not just one off. Now it's like this is the system. This is Hollywood now. This is what we will do. No franchise is safe, and and not only are we going to swap out the character, which might work, right? It could work.
Yes.
We're coming after you, and we're telling you how unwelcome you are.
Yeah.
And all under the pretense of inclusivity. But all I heard was "you're not welcome," which is like the exact opposite messaging. And
Exactly the exclusivity, like, oh, you're not welcome because you don't fit the standards of who we're looking for. And the people that they wor looking for aren't interested in their things, because if
well,
not they would be flooding to watch those movies and or those TV shows, and they're
and
not.
they were the basic message was you don't like women.
Yes.
You're an incel. Like you said, you live in the basement. You're a terrible man, and you hate women. And I remember I was like, we're the ones that came out to the theater to see Force Awakens in great numbers. We're the ones
Yeah.
who like Ripley and supported Sarah Connor and all these other great women. Like, how dare you say that we're not supporting women? Like, we always show up for great women characters in stories, and we haven't ever had a problem with it until now because of the media. So by 2017, that's where I found a lot of people on YouTube kind of voicing their frustration, specifically with The
Yeah.
Last Jedi. And also, I think The Last Jedi did something else that became egregious in retrospect was they did not follow anything that was set up in The Force Awakens. So
Yes.
how
They
did she
broke
beat?
lore.
Yeah, they broke lore, and it was like she beat Kylo Ren in the first movie. That should be unforgivable. Let's see what they do in the next movie. Well, she beats him again, and she kills Snoke. He's there when Kylo does it. So it's like,
Yeah.
what? So now I don't know about Force Awakens anymore. I don't think I like Force Awakens anymore, given what comes next. So now now Star Wars is looking like it's driving off of a cliff and
Yes.
giving the fans a middle finger while it's doing it, all at the same time. So, and that, like I said, Doctor Who's starting to do it. They're getting antagonistic. Star Trek's getting antagonistic, all at the same time. So in 2018, Incredibles 2 comes out. They focus on Helen Parr. It's now her story.
Yes.
Wreck-It Ralph Saves the Internet comes out, and it focuses on Vanellope. And they made a big deal in that film on how insecure Ralph was, and how that's not a problem Vanellope has to overcome. It's a problem with Ralph. Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out in 2018. Ocean's 8 comes out in 2018, where it's all female. It's like Ocean's 11, but now it's all women, like Ghostbusters. And these shows were not necessarily commercially successful. So the audience isn't, well, let me take that back. Incredibles 2 was very successful.
Incredibles, yeah.
I would still argue, based mainly on the merits of the first film, the beloved first film from 2004. Same thing with Wreck-It Ralph. Those were beloved. But Ocean's 11 wasn't, or Ocean's 8 wasn't that well received. Also, just as an aside, this is the year that, do you know who Elizabeth Holmes is?
Oh, yes. I do remember, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
She dressed like Steve Jobs. She was found out to be a fraud in this year. So, there's certain things happening that's kind of destroying this super female narrative that they're pushing, which, by the way, I don't need women to be super for me to like them. I don't mind that they're flawed. I'm flawed. Like, I'm okay with a less than perfect, less than super woman all the time on screen. Like, in fact, and we've talked about this, the vulnerability factor for women or men in storytelling is so critical in getting us to like and empathize and relate to the character. So anyway, the Superwoman story is starting to take some hits by 2018 for sure. Do you have any comments on any of those films?
Not really. I was avoiding them like the plague.
Well, right. So, but it's continuing a pattern where stories that had either a sidekick character who were female are now the lead, or
it was a full
female only version of a otherwise male story like Ocean.
Yeah, it just felt like there was I felt the agenda, and I was silently rebelling and watching older movies. I was diving into more retro movies again. Is it what can you do when you're looking at the roster for movies and that nothing really appeals to you, or makes you feel like, oh, this is something I want to dive into, or I can't wait to see this movie.
Right.
It never got the feels like that from any of these movies. Actually, I was more attracted to other like low budget movies.
Right. Yeah. In fact, I think I went through a complete rediscovery phase around this exact time where I was like, man, I'm going to watch all the Star Treks again. I'm going to watch I was like, man, these films are so much better than I remember. I really started like falling in love all over again with some of my favorite movies. And then I found this whole YouTube community, and it was like the first time I ever saw The Thing. I was like, oh my God, it's immediately one of my favorite movies now. So I was like, all the movies that somehow slipped the net that were in my genre that I would have seen. So I went back and I saw all of them, and lo and behold, I've got like all these new favorite movies creeping in. After all these years, I was like finding these new movies. So in 2019, we get a lot. Okay. Captain Marvel comes out in 2019. I think the first fully female Marvel film. And I remember seeing like "Shame on You" Marvel headlines for that as well. Game of Thrones season 8 comes out this year and blows it. They blow it big time. The Hustle comes out this year. Do you remember this movie? The all-female Dirty Rotten Scoundrels?
Yes.
Toy Story 4 comes out this year, in which Little Bo Peep, who was barely a sidekick, she was like a background character at best, is now the focus of the entire story. Terminator Dark Fate comes out this year.
Oh, boy.
Charlie's Angels comes out this year, the Kristen Stewart one.
The reboot of the movie, which
the reboot, and The Aeronauts comes out this year. Do you know about this movie, The Aeronauts? It's a historical fiction story about a real event, the first circumnavigation of the world by hot air balloon.
No.
Right, and it was done by two men. And they changed one of the characters to be a woman, a real character, a real man. Yeah, so a real live person in history they gender swapped, which is bizarre. It's like saying, here's the John F. Kennedy era with John F. Kennedy as Joan F. Kennedy, and
Yes.
how she missile crisis. It's like it's not historical fiction at all. Like you're way off. So
Horrible.
so this is when it's like, man, not only is this a pattern and a kind of a toxic pattern and a divisive pattern, now it's getting weird. You're like replacing real men in history with women. And then also 2019 is when Endgame came out and they had that really cringy girls get it done scene.
I hate that scene.
Right. So I don't think this was peak. I think it was close, but a lot came out that year. So, at this point, I think the word girl boss is being used as a negative term, widespread, because at this point, the majority of these stories coming out are not very good. And to make matters worse, they're all being covered with this sort of antagonistic attitude toward the fans, most of whom were men. And so at this point, there's little motivation for guys to be really supportive of these characters. In 2019, again, I think men want to be supportive of these characters, but you can't come out, call us a bunch of names, and then give us a very substandard story, and then call us more names when we don't like it. So, and at this point, I remember YouTube being more entertaining than some of the films. It was more interesting to listen to people talk about an old film that I loved than it was to go to the movie theater.
Yes, there was such an effort to try to make films more palatable for China, because that was a way for them to get to 1 billion really fast. So there was a lot of different conversations happening, a lot of inner workings of Hollywood manipulating films to make them more suitable, that more people will be wanting to see them. This is great money wise, but it's not a formula that they can really bank on, because they weren't creating really great movies.
Well, and the theory was, the theory at the time, I remember it was like, if we're more inclusive in this general sense, if we had more different races and backgrounds and women, then we're going to appeal to a wider demographic. That was what was told to us. And quite honestly, I understood that. That didn't sound weird to me.
No.
I was like, I get that. I could see that if you have a wider range of people, you might appeal to a wider range of people. However, now we're talking in 2025, that theory has largely failed to materialize. What seems to be the secret sauce is authenticity. Like Barbie was a very female-centric story by women, for women, and as a result, some guys could even laugh along and enjoy the movie because even if it wasn't made for them, they could the authenticness of the film as presented, you could just appreciate it for what it was. I would say Sinners is another movie that was very authentically told, and it even had hallmarks of things that a lot of the audience doesn't like, and yet it wasn't it was a great film. So authenticity, not trying to appeal to everybody, but telling a story from the heart that is meant to be told the way the storyteller wants to tell it, whether that's Ryan Coogler or Greta Gerwig or George Lucas, that vision being authentic. I think that seems to be the secret sauce now that we're in 2025, looking back.
And a lot of people will criticize creators like Tim Burton and say, oh, you need more Black people in your movies, or more ethnicities in your movies. I'm like, his movies are fine the way they are. If he feels like there's a character that really speaks out to him that he needs to have, that is of any with particular ethnicity or gender, go ahead, put it right in. But if it's not natural, doesn't feel right, I don't want to see a movie that's awkwardly done, where we have this weird storyline that doesn't seem to work because we're shoehorning like people in that are supposed to be in the film. And they do this with Robert Eggers. They're like, oh, you've got to do more movies with people of different ethnicities. He's like, this is the story I'm telling. I want to hear from storytellers. I don't want to hear from political.
Totally.
I don't want it messed with. I don't want it messed with political, arrangements. The other
Right, yeah,
thing,
Ryan Coogler's a great example on the other side. We need more Ryan Cooglers, not more Robert Eggers adding characters in for good measure to
yeah,
satisfy a certain. We need other storytellers that have their own vision. So Hollywood's in this billion-dollar arena now, and while all this crazy stuff is happening, and COVID hits.
yes,
So 2020 comes around, and by the way, 2020 wasn't without its Girlboss additions, despite really no one going to the movie theaters. And this was really the advent of streaming, by the way.
yes,
Birds of Prey comes out in 2020.
yes,
Mulan comes
hmm
out in 2020. The live action Mulan, like you said, to chase those China dollars. Wonder Woman 1984 comes out in 2020, and Queen's Gambit, which I liked, comes out.
hmm hmm
However, it was based off a false history. I didn't know this. I thought it was all a true story, and then I found out it was all made up, which I did think took a little bit away from it, since it seemed to be so authentic. I was like, oh, it would have been nicer if it was real. But
hmm
to be fair, it was a great movie, and the soundtrack is really good too. But Wonder Woman was the big disappointment, I would say. Uh,
Huge.
it did
Mulan as
not.
well. Mulan as well. Did
Mulan
not
as well.
the Chinese audience did not appreciate it.
And
From
Disney
China.
bent over backwards to cater to them.
Yeah, did not like it. And also, I think the lead actress said some things that that got her pretty much canceled in China. So that was another thing that happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I also noticed something that was similar between Star Wars: The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Mulan. I wrote an article on it, in that you have these lead heroines who don't need to practice or learn. They just in Mulan, they called it chi.
Oh
She just
no.
needed her chi. And
Yeah,
my thought
I
was, and
didn't
this led
say
to me
that
writing The
before.
Heroine's Labyrinth, by the way, one of the flaws of this is, how does that model behavior that a young girl could ever use in real life? If she is in a real crisis in her life, or struggling with a conflict of some kind, chi isn't going to help her. The force isn't
No.
going to help her. She's going to have to see these characters model something that they can model, that they can maybe emulate or learn from or understand. I remember seeing Luke Skywalker with his hand cut off, hanging from a weather vane at the bottom of Cloud City, and being like, whew, that sucks.
But also he got training, like with
Right.
Karate Kid, we have like this entire sequence of the boy like training and getting himself ready for a big fight at the
The
end.
Matrix.
Yeah,
You
there's
think
there's a
that's air
training
you're
scene.
breathing now?
He's yeah. There's the mentor to like guide them through things. This is what, I feel is missing in a lot of these movies, is like immediately and we did complain, people did complain about it in The Force Awakens, but it wasn't perpetual. It wasn't something that kept coming up and up in different movies just yet. That's
Well, we
something
also
that
thought that
eventually.
they were going to explain her competencies,
Exactly.
and then they said
Nope.
there are none. There are no. I mean, they went the exact other way and said nothing. And her
Yes.
parents are nobody. She's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
And she could beat up Luke Skywalker. And it's like, oh man, what?
And Kylo Ren
And
and every.
Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh God, what are we? What is this? And that's when I think I became very like enraptured with this. What is this? What are we learning? What does this mean? What is a heroic woman? Because being accused day in and day out of hating women when you don't really makes you start to want to defend yourself. And
Yeah.
I had just finished my book, which I was studying so many hero-centric stories. So I was like, there's so many hero-centric stories, and there are so many patterns that female characters exhibit on their own that model real world strategies for dealing with conflicts. Even if I'm a man, I can learn from these, and I have. The same way a woman can read a story that has a hero's journey and be like, I can learn from this.
Yes.
There's value in this.
Yeah.
Luke's modeling something that I can take, just like Wonder Woman is modeling something that I could take. And it's too, so, that's around this time when these were becoming an issue for me as well. But this is probably one of the weakest years, because COVID had pretty much eliminated the cinema. So in 2020, they would release a few of these on streaming since they were filmed and you couldn't go to the theater. By 2021, they said, no, we're not going to do that because if you dump them onto streaming, you don't make any money. They should have learned their lesson that day back in 2020. It took them until like 2025 to start rethinking this model. But so in 2021, we didn't really get much of anything, but we did get some additions to the Girlboss phenomenon. In 2021, we got Black Widow.
Yes.
Which was a very bizarre movie. Very bizarre. And No Time to Die, in which James Bond himself is starting to get shoulder checked by a female companion.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
In that movie. So, and he dies in it. So again, it's like carrying on this tradition of like destroying old male characters, at the same time that you're also promoting female characters. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can have great female characters and great male characters all day long.
And is always both. You can have both.
Yes. So now I will say, I think 2022 might be peak Girlboss era, where the negative connotation of it, because of the types of films that came out, the level of the level of incompetence in storytelling, the level of aggression in antagonizing the audience, the amount of misandry toward men. So in 2022, we get The Woman King, which is a historical story but again, she's not real. I don't understand why you can't just tell a story about a real person, but you get Miss Marvel comes out. She-Hulk comes out, which is very antagonistic toward the fans. And you get probably the top of the mountain here, Rings of Power, where Galadriel
did a lot of damage.
Who was a beloved secondary character, but like powerful and revered secondary character in Lord of the Rings, is now the lead action star. And boy, they don't pull anything. They go all in with her. To the media goes all in, the creators go all in, the company goes all in. Like it's mind-boggling. I watched 3 episodes and I'm not kidding, my head began to hurt because it was so incoherent, so awful, and so in defiance of good storytelling basics. Like in The Last Jedi when they killed Snoke. I was like, what writer would do this unless he's either a genius or he's an idiot who doesn't know how to write? And we ended up getting our answer on that. But here in in Rings of Power, the level of incompetence in storytelling became so extreme that it wasn't even funny. It was almost like tragic. It was like, now I have to sit in the lifeboat and watch the Titanic sink because this is really a disaster of effort. And it was expensive.
Yeah.
Did you see Rings of Power?
I did not. It's just not interesting to me. I do like fantasy. I did watch all of the Lord of the Rings, the first trilogy, then watch the Hobbit movies. At some point, I get it, and so I wasn't enjoying the visuals I was getting from the
trailers,
the trailers and teasers, and for some reason, I guess I could never like connect with the actress. Because my brain, I'm like, oh, I'm looking for Kate, and I don't see her. I don't like they visually don't look anything alike. So I was hoping they could have matched her a little bit better since she's playing a younger version of her. It just didn't appeal to me that way. I'm sure I mean, no offense to the actress or anything, and she's doing a job. It just didn't seem like the right casting for the character. And some of the other visuals I saw were just like she was pretty much soaring in the air like
leaping off of swords and stuff.
It was like a
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yes. And I was like, wait a minute, which I just couldn't attach myself to the content.
Galadriel from Rings of Power may end up being, in the end, as time goes on, the face of the girl boss, not
Oh,
Ray.
really?
And Ray was up there. I mean,
Mhm,
there's plenty you could put up there
mhm.
at near the top. Galadriel might be it. She might be the one who wins that badge of honor or dishonor. Um,
Interesting.
if you think of the girl boss who did the most girl boss stuff, it's Galadriel. And I mean, all those criteria that I shared earlier, like she does all of them to such an extreme. And the way that the media covered all of this was also so extreme and so aggressive as well. So just egregious, and it broke lore, like awful, like it was all over the place. But that's 2022. I think that's your peak. I think 2019 was like right there as well, but then COVID knocked that trend line down, and then I think 2022 it spiked right back up there with some
Yes.
pretty amazing additions. 2023, I think this is where the culture began to sense a need to change. However, a lot of the productions that had started during this era are still coming to the finish line.
Yes,
So
yes,
in 2023, you have The Marvels comes out,
yes,
touted as the new Avenger. Like, this is the Avengers, guys.
yes.
And it was a disaster. It was one of the biggest losses in money in film
Yeah,
history,
sadly.
followed by Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Also,
Mm,
one of the
mm.
largest busts in film history in terms of the amount of money lost. You had The Witcher season 3, in which the Henry Cavill was bumped to the side, and
Ooh,
this was done egregiously as well, and it lost all of its ratings. You did have Barbie. Barbie came
yes,
out in 2023,
yes.
and this was seen. This was not. This was a mixed bag because a lot of people who hated girl bosses immediately hated Barbie.
Mhm.
And Barbie did just enough, in my opinion, to validate their suspicions. There are a few cringe lines that even
Mm,
I'm like,
I
ah,
love them. Yeah, I love them. I thought they were really great, all the cringe. I thought it was deliciously refreshing, but I also felt like people were right about so much, but Barbie didn't seem to, like, was sort of like the last straw. But it wasn't. It was, I mean, I believe that movie is quite brilliant,
it
uh,
is. I love
quite
Barbie,
brilliant.
and I think that this is an example of what we're talking about with Ballerina, where there's excellence and, like you said,
Mm,
brilliance in the film that was not appreciated by everybody because of an aversion. And like I said, Barbie did just enough to give the people who wanted to hate it something to point to and say that's
yes,
the exact kind of thing that I hate. You know,
yes.
and I cringed at a couple lines, but those lines weren't enough to they didn't swing the movie for me because it really wasn't a serious offender. It wasn't
Mm,
a real girl boss. She's not a girl boss. I'm sorry, not even close. Barbie is very flawed, very vulnerable in this story, and has to overcome a lot. And she's a relatable heroine in this, and so is Ken, by the way. And there's a lot of counterculture messaging in Barbie that detractors should be embracing. And what's weird is Barbie is in this weird spot because it wasn't a full on girl boss. The establishment in Hollywood kind of rejected them. They didn't honor Barbie that much in the Academy Awards. They kind of snubbed her,
yes,
in my
yes.
opinion. And then because it wasn't full fledged anti-establishment, a lot of the audience found fault with it and couldn't quite get into that movie as well. So
Well, what I
Barbie
what
was
I will say about Barbie is, rather than all of these other, franchise, disruptors, I would call them,
Mhm.
where they take something from Star Wars and then they say, "Oh, now, now we're gonna flip the script on Star Wars and make it a franchise full of women,
Yeah,
to get more women to watch the show or whatever, and pull us in." Barbie knew what audience it was going for and didn't pretend to be a sci-fi story. It didn't pretend to be some other franchise Batman movie. It was Barbie. And
yeah,
it knew that it was going to go after women, and it went after the subject matters that are really, really most tender to women, and spoke directly to a lot of women that were very, very, enthusiastic about seeing this movie several times. It hit a
totally.
nerve to them. And so
Well,
and it wasn't meant to hit the nerve to a straight guy or any anybody who would be interested in any other franchise. This was specifically geared towards women, and the audience came out to support it because that was the genre that
That's what I
they
mean by
enjoyed.
authenticity. It was
Yeah.
true to itself. And so when I sat down, there were things happening on screen that I didn't understand because
Mm,
girls who grew up playing with Barbies,
yes.
they understood it. Like there's a scene where Barbie is
Oh,
laying on the ground and slowly starts standing up. And
yes.
my wife, she's like, "That's what the toy does."
Yes,
It
that's
was hard to
exactly
make
what she
Barbie
does.
stay seated. So I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "That is correct. I didn't get that, but once it was
Yeah.
explained to me, I could now appreciate what the filmmakers were doing. And I remember that. I remember looking around, like, "What's everyone laughing at?" And you would see like that mother daughter, and the daughter's like 30, and the mother's like 55, whatever. They're sitting together, they're laughing. So I could suddenly appreciate that women are enjoying this for their reasons. And I might not be getting all the jokes, but on second, when some of them were, and some of them I began to figure out as I was watching. So I was like, oh,
Yes.
those are actual accessories that she's throwing out. And they're like, the disco shirt, whatever. So I was like, they're speaking to the people who played with
Yes.
Barbie dolls. And
Yes.
because it was so true to that, I could now appreciate it for what it was, even though the movie wasn't made for me. It wasn't
Yes.
made for me,
Yes.
but I could
Yeah.
still appreciate it.
Exactly. And that's where I think the key element of storytelling shines is when you are staying true to yourself. That's what I was saying. And hopefully now we're opening up the market for filmmaking that more and more different people from different backgrounds can share their stories and we can enjoy them. The whole idea of this, diversity uh conversation that's coming up. We know we're only dealing with the subject matter of the girl boss, but that also comes into place of the diversity as well. It falls under the same umbrella. The hope was to hear stories from women directors, hear stories from someone from Ghana, someone from the Middle East, tell their story so we can hear those voices and not just squeeze people into roles just because we just want to see representation. We don't want to see that. We want to hear stories. I want to hear about like what people are enduring in their lives personally. That's the beauty of storytelling, and we're not getting that. We're getting preaching. We're getting people showing up and saying, "Oh well, the old standards of Snow White or is horrible. It's terrible." And it's like, wait a minute, the people grew up with that. This is that's somebody's favorite character. You can't go around saying that you hate something that you have no background on,
Right.
you know? And like we're in this society now where we are able to share our ideas and openly with the public, but maybe there should be some concern for the people that you may be offending when you're just saying whatever you want to say about an old character that has been around since the 1930s.
You know,
Uh,
that's a great point too. What you just said, you're like, the idea that diversity in the industry, diversity in voices, diversity in stories, rather than diversity in every story, kind of
well,
neutralizing all the uniquenesses of, the benefit of diversity is the differences and the
yes,
variances and the different perspectives and insights and focuses. If you smash all that together in every film, you're kind of neutralizing everybody. Whereas if
yes,
you let each and every one have their own voice and do their own movies and then come together and intermingle, then I think you'll have a vibrant industry as it should be, rather than neutralizing any one voice or trying to uplift just one voice or whatever. Let it fan out.
yes. I mean, like if they had done I'm thinking in particular the Little Mermaid, which had a lot of discourse around it. If they had taken that and actually put that on the coast of Africa, and actually made the story about an African version of the Little Mermaid, perhaps it wouldn't have gotten. People might have been enriched to see a story that was told from that perspective, possibly with some actual like history of Africans that are that live on the coastlines of different.
Totally.
You know,
Tell
that's
us a story from that perspective. You don't have to shoehorn something. That would have been, and that would have been much more interesting by far.
I would be there for that. I
And by
would
the way,
totally be
Little
there.
Mermaid, the new one came out in 2023, the year that we're talking about. So that's another contribution to 2023. And this was not well received, and it did not do that well at the box office. And I think the media made it worse by fanning the flames by preemptively calling everyone names if they didn't like it. It made people not want to like it because they're already attacking you, even if you haven't even gotten there yet. And again, no offense to any of the actors or actresses that are involved in these
This
things.
is all writing and decisions made by studios and people who are arranging these things. You can't just cast, a whole bunch of people to be in a room together. You've got to have a story, and sometimes their background is them being a Caucasian or a male. Maybe that's part of their story. But whatever it is, let it be and stop trying to manipulate that.
Yeah, well, that's in the writing world, we call that authorial intrusion, which is the intrusion of the author. Anytime you sense Doug creeping into the story with Theodora, I will have broken an illusion for you and I will have done a disservice. And it's a problem because authors sometimes want to intrude and have this character say this one thing because it matters to me.
Wow.
And that's why you have to go to writing groups, because a writing group will be like, this sounds like Doug Burton here. And I'm like, that's got to go then, because there should be no trace of Doug Burton when you read the story.
Yes.
You should read this and be like, where did Doug go? How did he write this if I can't even detect him in the writing?
Yes.
And that's how movies should be. You should be able to appreciate the movie or the story for what it is.
Those are the best ones.
And not because you sense the author, popping up and be like, oh, and say this, say that, because I don't like that in real life. And then ducking out of the story again. You don't want that. That takes away something from the movie. So
absolutely.
In 2024, we get a pretty big bevy, and it's a mixed bag here. There's some really good and there's some really bad. In 2024, we get Rings of Power season 2. I don't know anything about it. I didn't even bother with it, but it's, from what I hear, it's not much better than the first one, if not worse. We get The Acolyte from Lucasfilm, comes out in 2024. War of the Rohirrim comes out, which they have a girl boss in that one as well. Moana Part 2 comes out in 2024. Now, Moana Part 2 isn't very good, actually, but it's not a girl boss problem. It just seemed kind of rushed and bizarre. And they didn't get it right. Now it's commercially successful, but it's really not that good. Wicked came out. I've heard some good and bad things about that, but mostly good. Alien Romulus came out. I heard a lot of bad things. I didn't like it, but it wasn't because of the female lead. That didn't seem like a girl boss movie. It just seemed like a poorly done film. And then on the good side, Furiosa came out last year, but was not commercially, and it was a good movie, but not commercially successful.
Yes.
You also had Wicked, we talked about, which was commercially successful and I think mostly well received.
It's mostly because it's catering to a specific audience, theater kids.
Right.
It knows it's a musical. It was one of the most incredible Broadway musicals. I went to see it and it was fabulous. It's definitely got really great storyline. It was from a book that was pretty incredible and introduced new lore breaking. It was lore breaking for the Wizard of Oz, but it was still very good. It was a what if kind of story. It's just one of those things where if you don't know anything about it, you could actually enjoy it. So there's that. And when you have an audience already built in for the subject matter, and it's going to be very easy for it to be more of a success. And the thing that we're probably seeing with Ballerina and Furiosa is that these are sort of like spin-offs from something that was already successful. And of course, the hope is that a spin-off will do moderately well, but not quite. It might not do as well. But uh, you know, uh, the idea of wanting more Furiosa got mixed up, and so people definitely felt like, "Hey, wouldn't this have been really amazing if it was, Charlize?" Um, but also, people who went to see it still got the gratification of, you know, the basics of the Mad Max franchise, which is the chase and the cruelty and
Right.
the deserts and the apocalypse, and that's what they came for, and that's what they wanted. I think in the case of Ballerina, it's probably going to end up being a cult classic. A lot of people may be waiting for it to be streamed, and I've heard over and over again, especially with Ballerina, that nobody asked for this. And it kind of comes to mind like, oh, okay, so this was something that people didn't ask for. They had never seen really the ballerina character. We saw the ballerina school before, so we know it exists, but they don't really have the strongest connection to who the ballerina is in all this. So it could be a recognition issue that they're having. I've seen that they've even renamed it from the world of John Wick, Ballerina, as sort of the full title of the movie. So it's really like, I think people don't know what this is.
Yeah, and it's a little odd. It's just odd to kind of shoehorn John Wick in there and be like, yeah, it's part of this, but it's not this. Um, and he's on the movie poster, so it's like, are you trying to break away from this, or are you trying to have this like closely related to this? Because you haven't picked a lane. If you want her to stand on her own 2 feet, what even more interesting, knowing how the pop culture crowd is,
Hmm.
make the movie called Ballerina and then tell everyone afterward that it took place in the John Wick universe and have Easter
Ooh.
eggs in it, like that you could spot the second time you see it. You're like, oh my God, that's
Not
the
even tell
Continental.
people.
Or, you
Yeah,
know,
and that's another thing, is sort of the marketing for this all of a sudden started happening within the last week or so.
yeah,
And instead of that slow drip, like Superman's been getting, like they've been doing stuff for the last 2 months, just steadily like pounding you with like, oh, buy tickets, do this, do that. Like you've got to have that vigilance, even like Barbie. Barbie's marketing was exquisite. I mean, they did, they went
Barbenheimer.
full, full on intense marketing for that. And that's, you can't just show up like a week before and say, "Hey, we've got a movie coming out." It's gotta be an intense amount of marketing. So I think it's suffering because of that, but also, yeah, people are afraid that when they see this movie, they're going to get, that the girl boss, and it's like, from what I heard, it's not. Like it's completely entertaining.
Yeah, and don't underestimate word of mouth getting. There is an appetite in the. Whereas in what year
I love
was
when
it?
that happens.
Huh?
I love when that happens because that's what happened to Sinners. It was scheduled to flop, and because of word of mouth, people have been going to the theaters to see it.
Well, what was the other one that came out? We said it was one of the Barbie. Well,
Yes.
Barbie did very well, but like Furiosa, for example, the
Mm.
audience was like, I don't care. Like there was no appetite to. I feel like now there is an appetite. There's a segment of the audience like me, like you,
Mm.
that says, well, let's not write it off right away. Maybe it's good. And now there is
Yeah.
feedback coming in that it's good. So I do think that in 2025, there is a segment of the audience that have been rejecting the girl boss cinema because
Mhm.
it was a real thing and it was bad.
Yes. Yeah.
And we just recapped just how bad it really got and how pervasive it was. I think that there is a segment of this audience that is willing to come back for good storytelling. They don't want the girl boss. They don't want the criteria we discussed that made it a girl boss. So and real quick, I wanted to add in 2024 there was Honora. was a good one. The Substance with Demi
Oh, yeah,
Moore
yeah,
was
yeah. Mhm,
fantastic.
mhm.
And another movie called Strange Darling. Totally amazing
Yeah,
movies, hero-centric stories, fantastic. They were not they weren't even in the discussion of Girlboss. They were just totally great stories.
yes.
And now in 2025, you do have one big more, hopefully one of the last. Snow White came out this year.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Rachel Zegler Snow White, which was a bad contribution.
Oh,
But now, and I heard Fantastic Four is starting to really line up in
oh,
the girl boss
no.
arena because of the way they're talking about it in the media. They're
Yes.
presenting it as this rebuke of patriarchy. You know, I'm like, oh my god, this actually looked interesting to me with the '60s aesthetic.
Yes.
Now the way they're talking, it's not anyone else. It's the way they're talking. They might ruin this,
Oh, man.
and they might go girl boss with it. So, but if they do, this will be a disaster, predictably so, and it will simply finish off whatever lingering belief there is that this is the way to go. I think it will have been destroyed.
I
Um,
hope that they come to their senses because, look, I love seeing a powerful woman do her thing on screen. I just want a story to attach with that so I can feel close to that and I root for that individual. I want to collect their toys. I want to, do the cosplay and all that stuff. I have absolutely no desire to do any of that for a lot of these characters that are out there that that they presented as like, oh, this is the new superhero. Like She-Hulk, so cool of a character before the show, and then after the
yeah,
show was like, no. Um, and the show wasn't, I think if it had been sans some of the angry response to the audience kind of thing, or trying to get at basement dwellers, trying to be like, and the anti, like, let's try to get those misogynists out there and make fun of them, and just stuck to some comedy and just and also remained true to the comics. That was another issue, and actually felt followed through with an actual story and not totally unravel it at the end like, "Oh, all of this doesn't mean anything because, you know, um, bad writing." It just became a farce at the I mean, I watched the entire thing and was at the end furious. I was like, Can I get my money back for" it's like, "No, that you didn't pay anything. Well, you only paid the subscription, and, that's gone." So it was one of those things I couldn't get my time back for watching that show, and it was very upsetting. Again, another attempt to, make, uh, guys or the male entity, feel like, that they were inferior, or just the way, especially the way the She-Hulk was talking to the Hulk was just embarrassing. I was like, wow, he's been through so much. We've watched him for many movies, and go through so much. We've read the comic books. His life is not easy, and she's talking down to him like that. It was really upsetting
yeah.
to see that they had done that to a
Yeah, that
legacy
speech was
character.
nauseating.
To a like, you can't talk that way to a legacy character.
Well, and
Um,
most women, I said earlier in the stream that I believe firmly that most men like, if not love, heroic women in fiction.
oh, yeah.
On the flip side, I think women also like to see heroic men in fiction. So
I
the reality is we like to see
yes.
people we're attracted to behaving heroically, taking their lumps and coming out on top. I
Mhm.
also, even in my own writing with heroines, people don't. I don't think women. Some women might get a rise out of the basic kick in the nuts to a male character every once in a while, right? And you see that and
It's
whatever.
yeah, sometimes it's funny.
Sometimes it's funny, whatever. But I think women respond more to it's not that they want to see women beat up men.
Mm,
They don't want to see men get the best of women. And if a man has something is getting the best of a woman, they will stick it out with that character to see how she deals with it and how she gets
Yes.
how she turns it around on him. That's what they want to see, but it's personal. They want to see how she turns it around on that guy right there, not all men indiscriminately. They want to know how and if you're a good writer, you will present a character who breaks out of this issue or solves this conflict in a very convincing, believable way, and probably not without cost. It'll cost
Yes.
her something, and that cost is why we'll remember her, because we paid that cost with her when we followed her story. So,
Yes.
that's what I think people really respond to, and I think that's what they got to get back into telling. But I think women love heroic men, men like heroic men, men like heroic women, women like heroic women. Like, we like our heroic characters. We
Yes.
don't really get into the big overarching grudge against an entire demographic. No
Yeah.
one does.
Yeah.
Women don't really like it. Men don't really like it. And I think the media wishes we did.
Yes.
Maybe we'd like more of their movies if we hated each other more,
And just to like also put a light on this, there are some individuals out there who do look at movies at a different through a different lens now. Since we've had all of these women-centric movies that have been lackluster, they expect every movie to be like that with a female lead.
Yeah,
Every movie, like
it's a short leash, though. Yank.
yeah. And so even while looking at a movie that seems to be okay, sometimes, and I don't want to say everybody, but there are a small population of people that are actually criticizing every single bit of this to find what's not there. And it's a little bit frustrating because I'm like, oh no, this one, this is actually different than those other ones. But and just hearing that, saying that out loud, you're just like, wait a minute, what's the difference between these movies when you're presenting this narrative of a flawless female character or protagonist? You can't keep doing that and expect people to now see a new movie that's actually not doing that flawless thing, that sassy flawless female character that really annoys people instead of have them like, oh, yes, I want to be like her. Um, those sassy characters, every once in a while you can handle a sassy character, but it when it's like everything she does is great, but she's telling everybody off because nobody, everybody's at flawed, everybody else is flawed, but she's not. It becomes um, not just fantasy, but it's like I can't really identify with this person. She doesn't do anything that a woman would actually do it in the way a woman would do it.
Right.
It
And
just
it doesn't really
feels
give
out
you much.
unauthentic.
Yeah, and there's not much to model. You can't just tell off your boss the way She-Hulk does. You'll get fired. Like, you in the real world have to have a relationship with other people, with your boss, with your coworkers, with your friends, with your family members.
Mhm.
And relationships are messy and difficult, and there's a lot of compromise. And you might really hate something about this person, or she might act like all these other women doing something that you don't like. But you're gonna have to get along with her, and you're gonna have to work at that, and you're gonna have to, figure out
Exactly.
how to make it
Exactly.
some. And you want her to do that to you, to cut you a break once in a while, right? So,
Yeah.
you got the the nuts and bolts of a relationship is not in universally condemning any one group. You have to be able to get along with people, and you have to work at it. You have
Yes.
to work at it, and I think that I think one of the things you're saying too is now that the girl boss era, and I do believe, is essentially
I hope
over.
so.
There
I
might
hope
be
so.
one or two stragglers, but it's essentially over. So right now, the good movies are camouflaged behind
Mm.
the stigma of the girl boss. How do we find the good ones? How do
Yes.
we find the good ones? And I would say at this point, this is not 2019. This is not 2022. There's a movement away from this, a natural movement. I think the actresses are Jenna Ortega. She's been outspoken about, like, the actresses don't want these roles, like they
Yes.
may have thought they did a couple years ago. At this juncture, my advice is wait to see the movie before condemning it. And if it's
Yes.
not for you, then don't go see it, but then don't badmouth it.
Yeah.
Wait to see it. And if it's bad, then by all means tell us you don't
Yeah.
like it. If it's
Mm.
good, don't be afraid to stand up for a good movie. Never be afraid to stand up for excellence, wherever it comes from whatever corner, by whatever person, by whatever gender, doesn't matter. If it's
Yes.
excellent, stand up for it. And that's why we like movies. That's why we're here right now, because we really love these movies. You know,
Yeah. I mean, I think, I started my channel in 2016. It was just about that time where I felt like there were so many hypercritical, people on the internet about movies, and I wanted to highlight the fact that, you know, there were good movies out there, and these are the reasons why these are really great movies. And I'm always looking for great movies to discover. And the thing that really kind of gets you is like sometimes you may trust somebody, you may see somebody on the internet you trust, and they tell you, "Don't watch this movie." Because it's gonna, it's horrible. It's full of this. Just look at it for yourself before you just take their word for it. They may be wrong in this instance,
in
and you might
2025,
find.
you can't rely on the grapevine anymore. The
Mhm.
grapevine was very reliable for years because Hollywood was so consistently awful. And they were creating garbage, and they did seem to have malicious attitudes toward the fans. They did seem to be dogging us and come antagonizing us. They would say, if you don't like my book, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. Like, they were really in your face about it.
Yeah.
It's 2025. If you loved movies your whole life, and I do, I love movies. I bought all the soundtracks. Like, you can't see, but just off the side, I have all these. I have my figures and my little figure, my souvenirs and my collectibles. Like, you could see kind of there in the corner. Where is it? Right about there.
Oh, we see
That's
them, yeah.
the Colonial Marines with Vasquez and
Ooh.
Hicks and Frost and Hudson. And then right past that is the Queen Alien and Ripley in the loader fighting each other. So, I've got my. If you love movies, don't look for movies that you want to hate.
Mm.
If it's not a good movie, it's not a good movie at this point. I think we should be actively looking for the good stuff again, instead of actively condemning the bad stuff as much.
Yes.
There
Yes.
was a time for that, but I think that time has passed. And I think, and I could be wrong about this, we might
Mm.
be on the cusp.
I
This
hope
this
so.
might be wishful thinking. It might not, of a real explosion of excellent
A
storytelling
renaissance,
and
yes.
play. Because I think there's new people coming in now in the wake of this disaster the establishment left, where the studio system isn't working, where streaming destroyed. There's going to be a new group coming in, and they might have visions we haven't seen before, and that would be the greatest thing for me on earth.
Oh, yeah, me too. I mean, I couldn't have been happier when Sinners came out and people started saying such great things about it. I was like, "Oh, this is good." I felt like, finally we may be in an era of great movies again, like,
Oh, please.
1984, like we can actually have, fantastic movies. And I hope that that's what's being developed right now, that they're looking at how the climate got all weird and interestingly bad, but also, like, maybe we can make fun of it. Like, the movie Don't Look Up. I thought that movie got criticized to the gods, but I liked that movie because it was making fun of the obvious. And it was like, yeah, it's making fun of the both sides of the argument at the
South Park
same
does that
time.
all the time to make fun of both sides.
It's great when you get that honesty and not, just like, "Okay, we're gonna make sure that we fit, all the people in this, particular movie." I hate that stuff. I want good stories again, and I don't mind if my story comes from Nicaragua or if it comes from, the Viking another Viking story. I don't care if it's about the Mongols. I wanna see beautiful stories again, I mean, when you gotta look to Hollywood's past in order to see, um, cool stories. That's really sad. Like you can't look forward to anything. Like we need to get back to making movies great again. You know what I mean?
Well, it's true. Or the Oscars great again. It would be great to. I used to religiously watch the Oscars. I would.
My
I'd
family
pick
as
my
well.
number one and number two choice. I'd be in a competition with my friends and my family, and I would sit there and I was glued to the TV. I wanted to know if I got it right. Did I call the best actor this year? Because I know
Yeah,
that this
yeah,
is the
yeah.
best performance. I saw him, and this guy here. He won. She's the best actress, and I know she. And I want the Academy to agree with me. And they just did. Like it was so exciting to feel
Yes.
like I was able to recognize excellence in films enough to have to watch I had to watch the Oscars
Mm,
because the Oscars would know it. And
yeah.
now they don't care about the excellence; they care about something else. But I stopped watching the Oscars several years ago. It just got
Yeah.
unbearable. But you actually had a video where you were covering the Oscars, I think last
Mhm,
year. I saw
mhm.
your headline and I realized that, oh man, there's still people out there that are going to get into this and watch the Oscars. And it was the first time that I wanted to like the Oscars again. So
Oh.
hopefully, like you said, hopefully it's
Maybe I'll
coming
do a
back
party.
and they need to get rid of that judging guideline thing. Um,
Yes.
and they need to get rid of that. And I think that's the first step to allowing great stories based on their merit to rise to the top. And I do believe uh, in my at my core that excellence can be found in anyone. Doesn't matter what you look
Mhm,
like.
mhm.
Um, you could be excellent.
And
And
it's also studios, like, picking projects that are gonna be interesting and exciting. They're out there, they're just not being picked up. They're not being funded, they're not b they're not like, actual if you look at, Netflix, by the way, Netflix is doing it. They're doing what the big studios aren't doing, and they're not being, they don't do theater runs of any of their movies, but th- more companies, more studios, big studios should act like Netflix and actually look towards other countries for really great movies. I mean, look at Godzilla minus one.
totally, I was just
Um,
going to mention that.
just completely blew everybody's mind. RRR, another one that just was like, can you
Love that
believe
movie.
this
Loved it.
movie?
Like
Can you
loved it.
believe it? Yeah, can you believe that movie? It's incredible, and there are many more, but we don't get those movies, we don't get to see those
Yeah,
movies.
it's some of these smaller budget films that are doing all the heavy lifting. Warfare, one of the best war films I've ever seen. $20 million budget. Um, you
Oh,
know, it,
yeah, I heard it's really good.
Godzilla minus one, $10 million budget. Just incredible. They reused the soundtrack from the 1950s. Bum, bum, bum. Like it's the same music from 1950. And it's great. And I loved it.
Oh, man.
So, well, I'm going to close this out here. Yeah, we wanted to
Oh,
talk about it. We believe that the girl boss era began in 2015 and ended in 2025.
mm,
There might be a few stragglers, like we said, but I think the girl boss era is over. And I would like to see what I've always liked to see, which is great heroic women in fiction take the big screen by storm again. And I want them to be written well. I want actresses to be excited about these roles. I want the public to be excited. And I want to write about them in the next version of my book. And
yes.
I want new ones to study. It'd be great. But Retro, did you have any closing thoughts for us?
Oh, no, I just absolutely love this conversation. This was something that's been on my mind for the last couple of days. And I really am appreciative that you invited me to discuss this with you. It's so great.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on. And I think I know you look at old movies all the time and you have a lot of deep thoughts there, but it's nice to hear your take about this modern issue that has been affecting the film industry. This is
Yes.
one spoke. There's others as well that we could probably
Mhm.
talk about in a very similar way, but this is one area that the girl boss has become a stigmatized term, and I think a lot of women wish it wasn't the case.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
maybe we can get back to business of finding the right word for this new generation of heroic women in fiction.
Yes, yes. And look, I've always been waiting for a Red Sonja movie, okay? When is she coming? All
Really?
right.
Gotta be there.
I mean, really, like, talk about an incredible female character that we've been waiting for decades to show up on screen. So, yeah,
Oh my God.
it'll be great when when she arrives, provided that they don't water her down with modernism. Just make her like the comic books. It's real simple.
Oh my God.
Um,
You'd have a hit on your hands overnight.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just do everything that the first movie back in the 1985, I believe, did not do. Just do what they failed to do, and you'll be on on par. So.
Well, amen. That was great. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed it. We covered those years in the films and where the reputation of the girl boss came from, how they earned it, and also why we should start rethinking our use of the term, and why we should start looking to spot the gold in the riverbed that's going to be there, I think, going forward.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Well said.
and if you have any other comments, please leave it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please click like. And if you really liked it, click subscribe and stick around for
Ooh.
more conversations like this. So, all right. Well, good night, everybody.